I've recently had a number of emails from people who have been reading the Karma and Diamonds trilogy, of which I'm the author. And I wanted to address a particular question that has been cropping up in a number of these emails. And that question relates to being in relationships. What is it in ourselves that drives us to choosing somebody who is repetitively, it might be different people, but repetitively it's not the right person for us. Especially around being in a relationship with somebody who they are really drawn to and almost galvanized to be with. So the relationship starts, and then they're like a couple of years together, and then they break up, and then they get together again after a year or whatever. And it seems like there's a sense of knowing that actually this is not the relationship. You know, they know that this is not going to go anywhere. They actually have said so, which is the reason why the relationship has broken off in the first place. But you know, then after a period of time, again they come back. You know, to make it work, it's going to take a huge amount of giving up something that they truly believe in, and that's not something that they want to do. Now, what is it that makes us do something like that? So, bearing in mind that you know, I've written quite extensively on the way that karma works and unfolds in our lives. That's one of the perspectives that I want to address this from. So sometimes we think we've found a soulmate, and that's because there is this incredible galvanization. You're like two magnets coming together, and there's like a desire and passion, and there's something that is really stimulating, and you know, you like being with them and so on. Often we mistake soulmates simply because there's a strong emotional response and stimulation. And in that case, I would say it's possible that you've known that person somewhere along the lines of your soul journey before, in some other guise, in some other time, in some other space. And you may very well have been in a relationship. You may very well have had something going there that maybe, you know, didn't end well, or somehow got discontinued prematurely. There's a sort of karmic incompletion, you know, and the soul always recognizes previous experiences and memories that then feel like this is the one, this is the one, this is the one. So there is a deep sanskar, a deep imprint from those times, positive or negative. Perhaps positive, maybe not negative, but certainly something that is incomplete, that feels like it requires more work. And so that could be one reason. And you might say, well, that's a good reason to engage in a relationship. Well, I would say perhaps it isn't, and perhaps it isn't. What needs to be looked at in that circumstance is to actually see, what is it between the two of you that's looking for completion. So was there something in that previous experience that you know, was missing, or something that was left undone, or was prematurely brought to an end? And then the karmic element of that is really, how do you heal? How do you actually complete karma? Well, there's an amazing teacher that I met. I had the absolute good fortune of meeting a few years ago in New Mexico, and I write about the impact that this woman had on my life, and in the interruption of my karmic patterns, in my second book of Karma and Diamonds, which is called The Web of Karma. This woman is called Chris Griscom. She's still alive. She's like one of these angelic goddesses who's walking the planet for me. She taught me a technique in her sessions, which are indeed to recognize past life patterns. And what her technique does, and she evolved this technique herself, through the work that she did in the penitentiary of Bolivia with prisoners, etc., where she used techniques of acupuncture using something called the windows to the sky. These points are accessed with an acupuncture needle, but in her case she just does acupressure, and then you access these points, and and in just focusing on these 5 points, it allows you to access what is called the Akashic records. And the Akashic records are information that is kind of held in perpetuity, which is, essentially our own consciousness holding information about our own lives, about our own memories, anything which has been traumatic, anything which has been great, anything that needs looking at. Your higher self, your soul, as it were, will actually shine its light on this, so you will be able to see it. One of the techniques that she taught, I write about that technique in my second book, In the Web of Karma. I don't want to go into that here because it's a technique that you really need to make sure you understand correctly, but there is a technique that you can actually apply, and I use that a lot. It's a technique I use even before I go into my business meetings with people. I've been doing that in my corporate work for years and years. Before I meet somebody, I will actually use this technique of connecting with these people beforehand and completing any karma that I have with them. And so it's a fantastic technique. It's a very easy to implement technique, but it works. Why does it work? If it's visualization, if it's pure intent, why does it work? Because essentially who we are is consciousness. We are a spark of consciousness. We're a spark of light. Light is nothing other than consciousness. So once we start to get that, so much more is possible, which is why the law of attraction works. The law of attraction again addresses that aspect of our mind and our existence, where we start to bring forth, purely by aligning ourselves to that higher aspect of who we truly are, to shift the direction of what's happening in our lives. Right? So, and that's how I essentially changed my sanskar, my deeply rooted karmic patterns of choosing the wrong guy every single time. Now, it wasn't that every time the guy was wrong in the sense that he was a bad person. No, in fact, sometimes I actually got the right person. It's just that the timing wasn't right and the situation wasn't right? But that's what happens, is that in the end, the net result was that there was a drama, there was an unhappiness, there was a scenario where we had to break it off. So we don't have to do that. We can actually learn to be in the right place at the right time, in the right way, with the right person. In a relationship that you would love, like one which is peaceful. And in the context of peace, love arises, something which is really genuinely a deep love, and a recognition of the other person as a being, as a soul, as a higher self. You see the light in the other person, you see the beauty in the other person, you see their higher self, so that you can actually see what their potential is, and you are excited by that. That's something interesting to pursue. But the question is the other person ready and prepared to do the same? Because sometimes when what we like about the other person is that they recognize us, they see that spark in us, they see the higher aspect of us, but at the same time they like it and they're really inspired by it. But it takes something to rise to responding to the higher self in the other person. It takes something. What it takes is for both partners to have resolved certain aspects of their own emotional drama, their own emotional trauma, the aspect within them that has brought them pain. So if that's something that they have been doing, that's a journey they've authentically been on, and they might be ready for you, you might be ready for them. If that's not the case, it may be that there's a little bit of work to be done, and you can do that together. In the empowerment of each other, in the encouragement of each other, you can actually do that and support each other in healing, and simply showing up for somebody unconditionally, being that person who loves them unconditionally, being the person who listens to them, like gives them the gift of truly listening, not just to their words, but to their being, to their behavior, and creating a vast spaciousness, like a space for them in which they can be themselves. That alone can be a source of healing for people, holding a space for forgiveness and a space for showing up. Then that relationship can work. Sometimes what happens, and I've seen this for myself in my own life, is that there is a potential for continuing the relationship and taking it to a higher octave, but the other person might not be, or one of the two people may not be ready. And in fact, what happens is that reflecting, being a mirror, or reflecting back to them who they truly are, their higher self, the brilliance, the potential, you know, as much as they're inspired by that, it could also become something which confronts them. It could also become something which becomes a source of insecurity for them, because their egoic self, the lower self, as it were, the identity, the person that we know ourselves to be in daily life, maybe isn't quite ready for it, or feels that letting go of that aspect of their identity might, that the identity feels like it might be annihilated. It feels death and destruction afoot, which of course it is, because it is indeed, when you transform something or you transmute something, you're indeed bringing one aspect of what exists of you. You're kind of bringing that to a death. What is true transformation is that you that it takes what was, but it takes it into its higher octave. So that's a new state of being. It's not an existing state of being, or a previous state of being, or an alternative state of being. It is indeed a higher octave of what was already there that becomes something else. So that's true transformation, and that's what's possible in soul relationships. And that weaving together isn't a weaving together that then binds two people into a state of limitation. That coming together is something which kind of takes the two people in their individual selves into their higher octave, into their higher state. And so it's not like that kind of a binding together. It's more like a coming together and then growing apart and then coming together again, and then it's that, and it's absolutely beautiful. So if you think about the word namaste, the Anjali Mudra, which is like this, it is your higher self and my higher self coming together into one. But the two can easily go in different directions and then come together and then cross over, and then it's that kind of a scenario, and then they can actually hold themselves together in a state of like oneness, like a lotus flower that blooms and blossoms, and one holds the beauty of the other, and the other holds the light and reflects it back, and so on. So that's truly what higher self soul relationships are can make possible. Some people call them twin souls and stuff like that. I don't really know about the terminology of that. I'll be honest with you, I don't really know about the terminology, because at the end of the day we are individually universes in our own selves. We don't actually need anybody else to complete us in that regard, except that when somebody does show up and they happen to resonate and vibrate at our own frequency, and then we can actually grow together into our highest possible selves while being alive on this planet. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than that. It can truly only happen when we each individually recognize that we bring ourselves to a state where we genuinely recognize that we don't need another person. We are entirely capable of becoming whole ourselves, and to a certain extent we do have to become whole in our own being. We do have to heal ourselves to that state. So so when it comes back then to, is that person your soulmate? Is that genuinely a relationship that will serve you, empower you, energize you, and take you into your highest possible self in this lifetime? Then that's something that you have to look at and find for yourself. There's a fly sitting on my camera. Seems to like my camera. So then coming back to what about the fact that you feel so magnetized towards each other? Is that something that's helpful and useful? And how do you deal with that? How do you not be drawn to each other in like that kind of a scenario? Well, I think you really have to start looking at what is it that you really like about that person. What is it you want from them? Are they providing that? And are you providing what they need? And if that's not the case, perhaps, you really need to consider whether this is a relationship that's actually going to go anywhere. Is it actually going to take you anywhere? Is it going to grow? Is it going to nail you one foot to the floor totally? So you're just going round in circle and circle like that, in the unresolvable drama. Because sometimes, what you want and what the other person wants may not be compatible, and you just have to be honest about that. You really just have to be honest about that. You may love them. Love may not go away, but you might just have to say, I have to be true to myself. My life is about this, that, or the other, and you have to be really clear about what your life is about. So that would be a question I would ask. What values are truly important to you? What is your life about? Truly, what is your life about? This is not a question you'll arrive at in one go. If you've been asking that of yourself for a period of time, you've been really dwelling in that inquiry, then yes, you can arrive at the answer to that. And sometimes it takes a number of years to arrive at that. And I'm not saying that it has to take a number of years. I'm saying that it does require you to actually think about it, get some clarity about it, to really ask, who am I? What is my life for? What is it that I really value and cherish? And actually, at the end of the day, who do I want to become? Like, what would make me proud? The day I'm no longer here, my last breath, will I be able to tell myself, I lived my life really well? Who's the person that you can truly be with? So it's one of the reasons why relationships don't work out very well is that, we can't be with ourselves. We're not very comfortable in our own skins. And to be comfortable in your own skins, you do have to really answer some of these questions. Otherwise, we're going to keep wanting things from other people that other people just simply cannot provide to us. And that sense of wanting, that need, that desire, is like a hunger for food. I used to be really, I go through phases, and I still go through phases. But there used to be a period when I was really addicted to sugar and chocolate and anything sweet. And it used to be that I used to find that the more I ate, the more I wanted to eat. And the more I ate, the more I had to eat. So the only way for me to stop that was to actually, bring that to a halt. It was like literally cold turkey, stop. So I found a way for myself that worked to give up something that I just thought I was never ever going to be able to let go of. And it's no different in how we choose our partners and the kind of people that we're attracted to in life. Even if it's not a love partner, it might just be friends or relationships. We just have to recognize that if something or someone isn't compatible in our journey, on our soul's journey, how relevant is probably the best word, is that relationship. So I'm not saying that your relationships have to be, there in order to assist you in something or other, because relationships are just there because you love somebody or because you want to be with them, because you enjoy being with them. That's enough of a reason, of course. But if you're dedicated to your growth and your spiritual growth, then it's helpful if our partners are people who recognize that and who have the capacity to join us on that journey, and to, it's much more fun. It really is much more fun because there isn't that friction, and you guys can go together on the same path. And sometimes one might grow a little bit more, and then the other one overtakes, and sometimes you're together. It just depends on the two, but essentially there isn't any contradiction in terms of what your lives are about. And so one person's path might be using a corporate career, to discover their capacities and their self-expression and their growth, and things that they love to do, and so on. Another person might be in a completely different direction. It doesn't matter, as long as the two of you can support each other and recognize where you both are on the journey and what you need in a given moment, for that to happen. So you can, just like an addiction, let go any addiction. It takes a little bit of focus. You need to make up your mind. You need to make up your mind without lying to yourself. You need to make up your mind that you are ready to let go of something that isn't serving you, okay, whether it's sugar or a partner. And you really need to be true to yourself when it comes to that. And sometimes you might find that you have a little bit of a lapse, like you might have you might get back together for a short period and think, oh my God, okay, back there again, then let it go. And then come back to what your life is truly about, and then get clear about who would be an appropriate partner for you. Maybe there's some work for you to do before you can be in a relationship. Maybe it's time to be on your own for a period of time, without anybody. I mean, really alone. Travel, go on your own, do something that going away from where we are in our everyday environment is really helpful. Sometimes just to be able to put that physical distance between you and your everyday life, because it gives you a different perspective. It truly gives you a different perspective. It gives you an opportunity to think about what's going on in your life and so on. And just being in a space of no thought, as it were, away from your daily routine, finding your normal mental, whirlpool, like Patanjali, the sage Patanjali says, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. It's like, the yoga, the really the coming together of the integration of the higher self with its material self is, the bringing that whirlpool that goes on in our mind, that's just constantly churning around, kind of calming that down. And and basically when that happens, new insights can become possible. And so in Karma and Diamonds, I give a set of questions that you can ask. I also share a lot of insight behind those questions, in terms of how do you get clear about who is the right partner for you? How do you get clear about what kind of a relationship you want? Because it's important to get clear about these two questions if you're truly going to create that relationship, as opposed to just fall into one and hope for the best, or keep being attracted into the same patterns of relationship as you've always had. They may change faces and places and names of people and shapes of people, but actually in the end it's pretty much the same experience in terms of the karmic content that you're playing out. So what are those questions that you can ask yourself? Those questions are, what kind of a relationship do I really want in my life? Like with the partner, the one. What's the quality of that relationship? What kinds of experiences does it bring you? So who are you? What kind of a person that you are shows up in that relationship, and you want to make it your best, your absolute best. So you have to think about what that would be for you, and think in terms of qualities, not the form. Think in terms of the essence, the emotions, the kind of feelings you have. It's the essence that we're looking at. It's a relationship in which, you laugh a lot. It's a relationship in which you enjoy being together. Like, the experience of being together is just like so lush and so fulfilling that it makes your heart sing. It could be any of those types of things. That what is the relationship going to look like? And then what about the partner? What are you looking for in the partner? I have to be honest, I wanted everything. People say you can't have it all, etc. So I don't know. I feel I've got everything in the man who I'm married to. He is a soulmate and way beyond. I would say he has actually gone beyond the things that I wrote down in back in the day as to what I wanted in a relationship. I wanted a companion, I wanted a friend, I wanted a passionate lover, I wanted somebody who I could really trust, whose counsel I could really trust. and whose counsel was above any other, you know. And truly I have all of these things, and there were many other things. You know, somebody who was adventurous, somebody who would not feel threatened by my sense of adventure, somebody who would really indeed admire that, somebody who would admire my strength and my fire, somebody who was secure enough in his skin, somebody who was so at ease in his skin. You know, I had many things that I asked for. Now that's me. That's because that was what was relevant, and spoke to me, and that made my soul kind of burst in with the brightest of colors as I was you know, thinking about these things, and now I'm living them. And so you want to really think very carefully about it, and don't let that list be short. Let it be as extensive as you would love it to be. Okay, don't hold back, but don't ask for a 6'5" guy or a 6 foot guy with, you know, blonde hair and, you know, abs and all the rest of it, because that he may not show up in that. Then you're actually limiting what's possible, because you really want that person to show up. You want the person to show up in whatever form that is. Now, there may be some physical qualities and attributes that are important to you. For example, I happen to like tall men. And, you know, and somebody who's really interested in their fitness, somebody who's really healthy, somebody who's energetic. You know, by virtue of all these things, you get a certain kind of a form and a physique. But I never said it has to be, you know, a certain color of a person or a certain shape of a person or whatever. So I think that's important. Bear that in mind, because that will then make it very shallow and indeed very, I would say, unachievable, especially if you have deep essential qualities that you're also asking for. But you'd be amazed. Your higher self will bring it to you in a way that is just so surprising sometimes, and you have to be willing to receive. You have to be willing to be open to that. So, you know, of course, if there's somebody you don't fancy, as in, like, you know, they just don't excite you, then obviously that's not going to work. But what I'm saying is that connecting to your soul, connecting to your higher self, you will tap into what is deeply wishing to live itself through you and express itself through you. So, you know, that's perhaps the thing to do before you begin writing these things, is to sit down, be quiet, and tap into the deeper authentic self, and allow that to speak through you, and maybe just let your hand move, let your hand just move, do the writing, and try to use a paper and pen if you can, because there's something about connecting to the soul, and there being like a sensual experience, you know. I think it works better. And at the same time, I've written the entire Karma and Diamonds trilogy on a computer, so it's not that it doesn't work. But if you're not somebody that is deeply connected, it may be that it tends to get in the way a little bit, all the electrics and electronics and so on. So that's my view. You have to do it for yourself and see what happens. Ask that question: what kind of a relationship do you want to be in? And then ask the question about the qualities of the person that you're calling forth. And the qualities of that person may be generosity, kindness, you know, and so on. And who are you going to be in that relationship? Actually, that's a third question that's really interesting to ask. Who do you wish to experience yourself being? And, you know, you want to be that person now, because you're not going to wait for that for your partner to arrive and then you start to express those qualities in yourself. It doesn't work like that. You have to become that person now, because in being that person, that's your point of attraction. That will then magnetize the person, your partner, that then shows up for you, because that's who you are. That's who you are. And in your being in that way, it's inevitable that somebody who is within your region of vibration, who is you know, in that frequency, they will show up. Somebody who harmonizes with your soul's song, somebody who who weaves with your higher self's iridescent colors. You know, so who you are is critical in the whole equation, in being a point of attraction for everything else in your life and everybody else in your life that shows up. So who you are, that's what there is to tend to it ultimately. That's what there is to tend to. Who are you being? Who are you being? Who are you being? Is the question, the eternal question from this moment onwards, forever and a day. That it will be the place from which everything that shows up in your life shows up, and that's who are you being, in being the way that you wish others to be around you, and in being somebody that behaves in a certain way, not behaves in a like an acting kind of way, but authentically. You know, it's an expression, it's a self expression for you. So in becoming that way in how you are in your every aspect of your life, then that becomes the place from which everything else arises. So I would invite you to really make that question the forefront of your mind. Like, am I thinking thoughts which are critical of others? Am I thinking thoughts that are unkind? Am I being stingy in how I'm thinking about other people? You know, is there something I can do for somebody else right now? How can I open my heart a little bit more? How can I be more generous? How can I be more kind? How can I show on my face that I am loving life, that I feel good about myself, that I feel good about life, and that I trust that life will give me, even if right now my experience of life isn't ideal, that I trust that my life will give me that experience, and my higher self wants me for me way more than I can ever possibly imagine for myself. And my grandmother used to say, and I will never forget this, I truly, truly love her, and I'm ever sort of, you know, indebted to her for teaching this to me. And she said to me, you have to know how to enjoy the good fortune that life brings you. You have to know how to do that. You have to be capable, is what she meant. You have to be capable of enjoying the good that life has to offer you. And she was so right. I really took that on board, because what she meant was that life wants to give us great things all the time, but we are not capable of receiving it. Make yourself capable, make it a skill in who you're being, to receive the good that life has to bring you. I promise you, it will be amazing. It will be amazing to have that capacity. It's like expand your being, expand your mind, expand your heart, expand your soul. Become the higher self in terms of how you receive life, because it really wants to give you its absolute best. And make no apology for the great stuff that you receive and the good fortune that you receive. You don't make no apology for it, because you will know when you have all these things happen in your life, you will know that you worked for it. It didn't just arrive. You had to work for it. You know, you had to make yourself available. It's very easy to live in drama. It's very easy to moan and complain and be bitchy about other people's good fortune, but it's much harder to be that person who receives the great stuff in life. You know, it's much harder because of the fact that, you know, there may not be agreement in your environment. People may not necessarily approve of you once you are different to them, or once they think that you're happier than they are. We have to constantly open ourselves to greater and greater realms of happiness, to greater and greater realms of joy, and that is what we are about. That's what we are here for. That's what we're here to experience, is our highest essence. What is my highest essence? So in asking the question, who am I being right now, the sort of follow on from that is, am I present to my highest essence right now? How can I be more expressive of that? And that's a really interesting journey to go on. People call that spiritual growth, spiritual journey. For me, it's not any of those things. For me, it's just the truth about living life. It's who we are. That's what we're here for. So I wish you all the happiness on the planet and the universe. I wish you all the joy in the world. And one thing I will leave you with is never apologize for your greatness, never apologize for your happiness, and never compare it to anybody else. You are who you are, and that's what you're here to express, and that's who you're here to be.